Hi, I'm a full-stack Ruby on Rails engineer, and in this video I will walk you through how I build a CI/CD pipeline with HIPAA compliant in a real world. Not checkbox compliant, but something you can confidently run for healthcare compliance that touches PHI. A lot of teams assumes HIPAA compliance magically happens at the infrastructure layer. In reality, your CI/CD is one of the easiest places to leak your secrets, expose logs, or auditability. So what I'll do today is walk you through a practical Rails based pipeline, explain the reasoning behind each step, and then demonstrate the code and configuration with you. Before touching the code, let's level set. CI/CD becomes a compliance risk because it handles three sensitive things: secrets, source code, and maintainability. If your pipeline prints environment variables, you are one debug statement away to exposing your PHI related credentials. If your test database uses real production data, then you are already out of bounds. And if your deployments are not auditable, then you cannot prove who changed what and when. So the goal here is simple: isolate environments, encrypt everything, avoid PHI entirely in CI, and leave a clean audit trail. Let's start in the Rails repo. In the HIPAA compliant setup, CI never talks to production secrets directly. Instead, I define a dedicated CI environment. In Rails, that starts with configuration separation. The important point here is that encryption is enabled exactly the same way it is in the staging or production, but the keys are unique to CI. Even if something leaks, it cannot decrypt real data. And just to be explicit, there is no PHI in CI. All data is synthetic or factory generated. Now let's look at the pipeline itself. I'll demonstrate this using GitHub Actions, but the principles apply anywhere. Name, HIPAA CI. A few things matter here. Secrets only come from the CI secret store. They are never closed e-code. The database is ephemeral and destroyed after the job finishes. And logs are intentionally kept at an informational level to avoid verbose dumps. This is one of those places where being boring is a feature, predictable, repeatable, and minimal. One subtle but critical area to test data. In healthcare systems, developers often copy production records into staging or test for realism. That is not applicable or acceptable in CI. Here's a simple example of how I enforce synthetic data at the model level. You can see my factory of a patient model. No real names, no real identifiers, and importantly, encrypted attributes are still exercised, so encryption logic is tested without risking PHI exposure. I also recommend adding a safeguard test that fails the build if production database connections are detected. It sounds paranoid, but it saves carriers. Now let's talk about deployment, because HIPAA is just as much about traceability as it is about security. Every deployment should be attributable to a commit, a pipeline run, and an actor. In practice, that means tagging, releasing, and logging deployments. Here's a simple Rails initializer example. And in the deployment workflow, I inject the commit SHA. Now, when editor asks what code was running on this date, you have an answer backed by logs, version control, not guesswork. To wrap this up, HIPAA compliance is not about adding complexity. It's about removing unsafe assumptions. Do not let CI see real PHI. Encrypt everything consistently, treat logs as sensitive, and make every change auditable. If you do those four things well, your real CI/CD pipeline becomes a strength rather than becoming a liability. If this was helpful and you are building in a healthcare space, this is exactly the level of rigor you should expect from production environments. Thank you for watching.